give everyone the opportunity to join. So just pause with us for a minute until we kick things off. All right, let's go ahead and kick it off. My name is Darren Tomey. I'm the Senior Vice President at AllCloud. It's a pleasure to be with everyone today. Quick recap. We are getting ready to embark on a pretty interesting and I think awesome conversation. We've got great guests. The key points that we're going to be focused on today is number one is the top CPQ considerations, right? So what's the pre-work that you should be doing to achieve the right outcomes? Second one, are what are the key components of mapping out a CPQ implementation? Number three is why and how to integrate CPQ and ERP. And then the last is real world story with our special guest, Andrew Bombacero from Brand Safeway. So those are the 4 key points. You'll see the opportunity to submit questions throughout. Feel free to do so. The agenda, real fast, we're gonna do quick introductions, and we're gonna dive right into the content after that. So, by way of introduction, as I said a minute ago, my name is Darren Tomey, Senior Vice President of Sales here at AllCloud. Also on the call, we have Josh Horn, who's a Salesforce Principal Solution Engineer. Nathan Spiewak, who is our CPQ practice lead at AllCloud. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, our special guest, Andrew Bombacero, Vice President, Brand Safeway. So, Nathan, I'd like for you to just give a quick introduction, if you could, about why CPQ and why now.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Darren. So yeah, CPQ. Why are we having this conversation now? Well, with how the world is, and everyone's trying to do more with less. We've got to, of course, increase revenue. We have to get more quotes out the door faster, and really be as responsive as possible with our prospects and customers. We can see on the slide here lots of really good key benefits. Again, generation of quotes. So often we hear customers and people we're talking to that it just takes so long that they're doing all this what feels like busy work to get the quote out the door to the customer, slowing down the sales cycle. And we want to have that go faster, as fast as we can possibly go. Get more quotes out the door, more money back in the door. Also, we are living in a world that's more and more remote-based. And so approvals maybe used to be an email or a phone call or stopping by somebody's desk. We want that to be in an automated fashion, in a system way, reducing time, and again, having that in an audible location. So again, approvals are a big part of making sure that you're selling the right thing at the right price that's going to make you money. And then once, we all, so many customers are using Salesforce to track pipeline, but there's a delay basically between opportunity management to actual cash generation. So we want to speed that up and have the systems working together and all in sync. And then of course, when you've got, you've got your rock star sales reps that know everything and how to do it all, then that's great. But you often do need new reps, and getting them on board faster, having the system kind of hold their hand, give them guardrails on what products you can cross-sell with other things, how you can upsell, giving them guidelines around what should be the discount in this area, to really make sure that your new reps are getting up to speed and generating that value for your company as quickly as possible. Again, these are all key things at any time that every company wants to accomplish and improve upon. But we think even at the moment, it's even more of a goal and even more important. The leveraging CPQ for your growth. One thing about CPQ is often people think about it's just a coding tool. It's just creating a PDF, but the process of getting everybody on the same page, getting all of the various teams, whether it be finance and your legal department, accounting, your sales, operations team, all working off of the same information, and can really help to break down those barriers. And a CPQ project very often has that kind of cross-departmental element when you have approvals and you have pricing and you've got communication with inventory or material management, obviously the sales management as well. So again, removing those barriers between the different teams, so there's better collaboration, easier communication, and just faster work. And of course, this allows your sales rep to do the thing that they're best at, building relationships with your customers, building trust, rather than the paperwork on the back end. And of course, this helps to standardize your processes. Again, if one sales rep is a rock star and they've got their process that's working really well, and then you've got other sales reps that don't have the same process and maybe aren't having the same level of success, having the system provide that that information in order to be successful as a rep is really key. We want to set them up for success to make your company as much money as possible. One of the things we do like to talk about is what we call the CPQ Iceberg. Again, sometimes we talk to customers and they're like, well, again, it's just a coding process. Maybe you're doing it in Excel, or maybe you're doing it in a Word document, something very simple and low tech. It's easy, but we think once you dig into it, there's with Salesforce CPQ, there's a lot that can be done in the background, so that the front end for your sales reps is easy and automatic. The back end can do a lot of that thinking and automation for them. So, again, just like an iceberg, the thing that's perceived, the thing that's actually seen above the water could be pretty small and not very imposing, but the level of effort and information and diligence behind the scenes in order to make it that simple is sometimes more than people expect, or more than people assume. So that's why we like to be that guide to make sure that we're thinking through all of the various ideas and options and considerations, best practices, so that it's set up correctly and it's doing what you need it to do. And again, providing that help and assistance for your reps, as well as the other teams that are involved in the process. And again, we just wanted to outline a very simplified view of what CPQ is. If there's people on that aren't quite sure, again, this is the standard or the enhanced quoting process within Salesforce, building that quote, adding products. And again, there's lots of really cool tools that Salesforce provides in order to find the right products, product bundling, validating that the correct products are there, and maybe shipping is automatically added, or if there's a warranty that needs to be added, or even tax information, or whatever it might be. And then, of course, we would have automatic discounts, system discounts, maybe volume-based or term length-based discounts, and promotional discounting, whatever that might be. And then all of that flows into approvals. So again, the system knows what it should be, and it can communicate with the user so they know very quickly and clearly what approvals are required and why, and who's going to be approving those. And as they're approving, having comments back and forth, that communication to make sure that the correct quote is going out the door. And of course, once it's approved, you've got that PDF document, something for the customer to sign, again, it could be integrated with DocuSign or another e-signature tool to get it, again, to your customers as quickly and effortlessly as possible, and get that signature so that, again, we can get that that revenue process moving. So again, just a kind of high-level overview of CPQ, what it can do for you, and we're going to obviously spend some time with our panel here talking more in depth about a lot of these ideas. But I'll pass it back to Darren.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. It was a great overview. I really do appreciate it. I think it sets the stage for this conversation that we're about to have as a panel. Before we get that started, we have our special guest, Andrew Bombasero from Brand Safeway. Andrew, could you take a minute and just introduce Brand Safeway, and maybe talk a little about, why did you guys choose Salesforce CPQ? What were you using before? What was the impetus for change, right? What drove you guys to make that decision for the transformation that you guys have went through?
Sure, thanks, Darren. I see a couple of Brand Safeway folks on the attendee list too, so they should be somewhat familiar with the program we've undertaken. So Brand Safeway is a leading global provider of access, specialized services, informing and shoring solutions for the industrial, commercial, and infrastructure end markets. In about mid-2018, we launched Salesforce across the company, mainly as a pipeline management tool, and pretty immediately thereafter recognized within the division that I'm in that there's a lot of capabilities in the system that we're not utilizing, right? And we had been previously did everything on spreadsheets, and saw the power that existed in Salesforce and wanted to try to tackle some of our other problems with it and utilize that technology. So we kind of identified that the biggest impact immediately and the easiest implementation would be standardizing our proposal development, for faster quoting, better price control, and just overall improved visibility. We reviewed several different solutions, but ultimately decided on CPQ just because it gave us the flexibility we needed to generate and manage complex proposals and approvals, all within the Salesforce platform.
That's awesome. So when you said you guys, 2018, you adopted Salesforce, just clarification, right? That was Sales Cloud.
Yes.
Okay. And prior to that, you guys had multiple different companies, right? You guys went through a pretty large, very large activity around mergers and acquisitions. And so you were really looking to consolidate the data and things of that nature, right? So you had that unified view across the business broken down by division.
Exactly.
Okay, good deal. I appreciate that. That's awesome. I think, again, it leads into a great conversation we're getting ready to have. Sorry about the dogs. Real quick, poll question. What tool does your organization have in place today for managing sales quotes and the configuration process? Got a lot of attendees. We'd love to get as much participation as we can. Feel free to answer, and we'll share the responses. So let's go ahead and roll into the first topic from a panel perspective. So, Andrew, I'm going to start with you. This is around the common challenges, right? What were you facing? What challenges did you have to get? Over to get things going, right? So, what was the biggest block for you and for Brand Safeway in getting started?
So, within our division, I mean, we were dealing with a geographic spread, and as you kind of mentioned before, we had the company grown through substantial M&A activity over a number of years. So we had inconsistent systems, and even we're dealing with multiple ERPs depending on what part of the world or what division of the company you were in. So we had very little consistency in the way that we rolled up information. And it was always a very manual, largely Excel-based process. So we had in that environment, we had, you know, existing tools and processes in place in various parts of the world, and oftentimes, you know, the business really said, "Hey, it's good enough. It's working okay, and you know, why break it, right? If it's not broke, don't try to fix it." And so there was a huge amount of, you know, organizational inertia that kind of, you know, dragged things down. So really, for me to get all the right stakeholders kind of convinced and bought in that this was the right path forward was key. You know, always there's a challenge in funding and justifying the expenditure for a project like this. And, you know, that was a multi-month process of presentations and, you know, really putting together and building out the business case. But ultimately, you know, the benefits that we saw in implementing CPQ, you know, it just made sense for us to go that direction.
That's great. Nathan, you were part of that, right? You were part of the process, helping brand Safeway from the get-go. What do you see as, you know, you've done dozens and dozens and dozens of these implementations, not just with brand Safeway, but across a lot of different brands and customers. But, you know, what do you typically see as that biggest barrier to getting started?
Yeah, a couple of common barriers. One is just getting the right people in the room together. Because again, it's one of those topics that often it's like, oh, it's just a sales thing, but it often isn't. And when we're talking about what about terms and conditions, what about payments and finance, subscriptions that are ongoing, and how to manage that. And so getting people in the room, and we were doing that with Andrew. I remember we went on site back in the day and had a bunch of people around a conference room and said, okay, what are the pain points? What are the main goals here? How can we get, you know, the company on the same page? So then we could, and we could guide and assist with that. But yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenges we see. And then sometimes showing them what it could be, right? Because everyone, you've got something that works, but saying, hey, this is what it can do. People often can't envision that. So a lot of my role is part of being an educator and to show what it could look like and those benefits that maybe they're not aware of.
Yeah, the old art of the possible.
Yeah. Good.
I like it. So Josh, you know, Andrew's touched on, you know, a couple of great points. You know, get the right stakeholders and the right groups. You know, Nathan talks about, you know, the art of the possible. What do you see, right? You're on the Salesforce side, you know, what do you often see when you're advising, right? And how to take a look at how different people across different departments are engaged and why?
Yeah, I think the key in that scenario is you really need to help those variety of stakeholders generate some clarity in their vision. Everyone's going to want different things. Sales folks are going to want minimizing errors, and they want to maximize margin. They want to increase upsell and cross-sell. You have your ops people that want to have a more standardized, structured process, but then retain flexibility across the sales process so the sales folks can do what they want to do. And so helping all the disparate stakeholders find some of that clarity is key. And CPQ can provide, you know, a variety of solutions across all of those different areas. And so one of the things that I tend to do is not only focus just on the general pain, but on what really moves the needle for people. Most of the time, it's revenue. There's a combination. It's revenue or it's operational costs. How much manual effort do I have to go through? So I tend to ask those groups, you know, where are you leaking revenue? Where are you leaving money on the table? Are you cross-selling properly? Are you upselling properly? Are you discounting too much? And through all of those processes, where are you spending the most people time? And sometimes that's okay, but Salesforce and CPQ have they constantly are thinking about automation and how to automate manual processes. And so if there's a big pain there, CPQ and Salesforce can bring those things together. Recovering revenue, exposing new revenue, while maintaining a high level of automation.
I love it. And I would also venture to say, right, creating a path that has the least number of clicks to keep your salespeople selling, right? It all kind of feeds back into it. But listen, salespeople are some of the most highly paid individuals in a company. The last thing you want them doing is typing out a proposal, and let's just do it by a click process, get it done. Nathan talked about it earlier. Drop it into DocuSign, Conga, something like that, get it out for signature, right? Shortest path to the most revenue. So I love it. Second poll question real fast. What challenges, or what's the challenge, or what challenges your organization facing in regards to managing product configuration and pricing? If you could check all that apply, that would be awesome. And we'll give this a minute. As we as everyone's going through and answering this, the next focus that we're going to go into is really about project approach, right? Global rollout and how that process looks and what the approach has been for successful deployments. All right. Awesome. Great participation. Yeah, it looks like the top answer there was lengthy and error-prone manual processes. Makes a lot of sense, right? So good deal. Let's move forward. Let's get into global rollout project approach. So Andrew, you started working with us. We did a kickoff with through a pilot process, focus on a single region at Brand Safeway. Why did you take this approach, and how did it help prove out the solution for the phases that we're now doing obviously we're doing a global rollout now, but what was that process, right? How did you get to that approach, and how did that benefit the final decision?
Yeah, so we arrived at this decision, in talking with Nathan and the team, and really kind of thinking through what was our best opportunity to, kind of validate the proof of concept, and dip a toe in the water, right, before we dove right in. Like I mentioned before, we were working across within the division a global team that had very diverse processes and systems in place. And where we selected, we actually selected our business in Romania, and just because it had the right combination of existing tools, which limited our need to build out a lot of the back end libraries and information to support the quoting process, but didn't have so many sophisticated systems actually in use that we were disrupting their normal business. So it was kind of a perfect scenario where we could bring them CPQ and introduce a new tool, give them something that they didn't have, which made the quoting process easier for them, made the sales cycle faster and more seamless, but didn't require a tremendous amount of development because we could pull resources from other regions. So for us, I mean, really, that was our kind of plan, to take it in Romania, try it there, and then from there, start to move on throughout the rest of the regions globally.
That's awesome. Well, it's been a great project, and obviously, we love working with you guys. But Nathan, as I mentioned a minute ago, you've been on the ground. Yeah, you've literally been in Houston. You've been in Romania, right? So when you're kicking this off with Brand, there was some work that had to be done, right, on showing how this provide value, not just the art of the possible, but how can it provide value and an ROI. Can you tell us what that included and share what that looked like?
Yeah, exactly. So we actually have a quick visual because we didn't want to just, well, I guess for Romania, we had some estimates. We had some thoughts as far as like how it would add value, how it would, make things faster and easier and provide the sales reps with a tool to make their lives better. But because we were able to do the pilot, we've been able to go back working with the Salesforce business value team and actually validate some of those numbers. And so, yeah, we can actually see here that, increasing revenue, which is obviously one of the most crucial items, we're able to see that there's an improved win rate of, even up to potentially 20%, and some real dollars there. Obviously, we've taken out some of the real dollar amounts, but we're able to actually provide the real dollar values to the brand team. And of course, again, being a global company, scaling is just so important. So being able to scale this to other regions, other countries, and provide that same value to other groups. But yeah, we see higher win rate, higher deal size, higher productivity as far as being able to get quotes out the door faster, fewer clicks, less time waiting for approvals. And again, all that also allows them to have better forecast. So, and that was for two sides of it: forecasting for revenue, but also forecasting for material management. Because again, if quoting's happening in Excel, there's no way for the downstream teams to know what's coming. And so again, being able to validate the numbers for brand and really say, hey, if we're able to get anywhere close to these same numbers in your other regions, then it's going to, pay for itself. I think we figured out 10 times over or so, quite quickly. So really made that the decision-making process a lot easier.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to dig into this real quick just for a second.
Sure.
I want to make sure that I'm seeing this correctly. So, one of the key priorities, right? Increase revenue.
Mm-hmm.
The benchmark that I see, right, was based on improved win rate. Obviously, improved win rate, that's going to drive increased revenue. So the benchmark that was set with the low expectation was 3%. The highest expectation was a 30% increase in win rate. And is this saying that, am I reading this right? Like it was 20% in that range?
So
year over year, right?
Yeah.
That
so
was
we basically
Q1 year over year increase versus the previous, right?
Versus the previous year. So yeah,
okay.
We figured out it's about a 20% increase, and it could be as high as 30, but we think it's about a 20% increase in win rate. So pretty significant.
And then I'm not going to go down all of them, but the productivity.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about that a minute ago, right? Keep your salespeople selling. Okay, if we're increasing win rate, and now we got to drive better productivity, right? If we're going to increase win rate, and we've got a 20% increase in win rate, well, gosh, let's keep our salespeople selling, and talk me through that one, because it looks like, again, looking at a year over year increase for Q1, the benchmark was, hey, let's get a 10% increase in productivity as a minimum, and we ended up at a 25% increase.
Yeah, we were measuring like how many quotes were going out the door with the same number of people, and we had 25% more quotes going out the door with the same number of people. And so we make it takes less time, and so you're able to send more quotes.
Excellent. I appreciate that. That's very compelling. Josh, other groups, right? What are the benefits of going all in, right, at one time, right? Not everyone does a pilot and then moves, and not everyone follows this methodology. But what are the benefits of going all in at once?
So when you think about a global rollout, the key benefit is visibility across the landscape. Different siloed departments are doing things that run their business very well. And when you think about their business within a CPQ construct, it's going to get even better. But the way that they're doing things might be applicable across other business units, across other markets, across other product sets. And so when you think about a global evaluation and a global rollout, you now have this visibility across all of those different isolated silos. And so your data gets better, your ability to analyze your business gets better, and that all feeds back into the ongoing and future sales process that contribute to those increase in numbers that we were just looking at. Yeah. Now, global rollout is challenging, but it can also be phased. It can be a phased approach. You don't have to have a global, go live. Global rollout and a global implementation is really just about assessing the global impact and the global change into a CPQ system. You can still phase that out and make it a safe process for the entire company.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Which is what we're doing, right, with brand. So it's not like we're rolling out 7 new projects on top of each other. We're doing it in a sequential manner and managing it. Change management is tough, right? And so throwing everything on everyone at once could be challenging. So so the next kind of iteration on that is, when we think about a successful implementation, what are the considerations? And we've talked about a few things, right? Mm-hmm. Getting people at the table and having a broad audience, et cetera. But Nathan, you're leading the implementation with brand, but also, like I said earlier, you've done a lot of others. What were the main considerations that you looked to? I mean, hell, you wrote an ebook on this, right? So, talk to us.
Yeah. We've mentioned many times, getting the right people in the room. But the next step after that is building that roadmap, because we want to make sure we're thinking not just about the one thing we need to do right now or the biggest pain point right this second. But let's plan out where do you want to be in 5 years, and working with the team to understand the key growth for their business, and then building out that roadmap. And so that turns into, again, multiple phases, multiple different potential products or projects. And they, because they're building one on the next, you've got to plan ahead. You've got to make sure you're thinking about, hey, we're maybe not integrating with the ERP on this first phase, but we are planning on doing that in phase 2 or phase 3. So we've got to build with that in mind. And so again, for us coming in, really understanding the big picture and laying out that roadmap with the customer, having that shared vision of the possible, and working with them to then make that happen. But I think that's just crucial. And again, a lot of times you don't have people with that vision, especially if people try and do CPQ on their own occasionally, and they just don't have the best practices and that long-term vision to make that happen.
Yeah, I know we've talked about this several times. It's kind of like, you're building a house, you build a foundation, right? But you have the land to build on, right? So build your foundation, make sure it's structured enough. Maybe you want to go more than one story. You start with one story, and then 5 years later, you're adding another story and then another story, right? So you got to make sure those footers are deep enough down, right, to support it. Andrew, let's talk real quick. What was the most important aspect of the pilot implementation that drove success at brand?
So I would say, to tag on to what Nathan was saying, we spent a lot of time discussing, well beyond what this project entailed, right? So really to ensure that we were clear on what not only the long range vision was for the kind of direction we went in with the company and interfacing with other functional groups and bits of information we wanted to pull into our system, but also kind of future-proofing the development, so that when we move beyond the pilot stage, we had laid the groundwork for taking the pilot build and being able to translate it into all of the other country requirements and region requirements. So we started in Romania, and they did have, some unique requirements for their local business, but we brought together a global team from all of the regions who were part of the development and trial during this pilot process, so that they had input, they had visibility, and they understood, really kind of where we were going, and they got to participate. So when we came to, when we get to launch in their part of the world, they already know what's coming. They've already had input, and so we kind of have an advocate, already built for us in the regions we move to. One of the other things I think, though, on the other side, and Nathan was good at keeping helping me stay within the guardrails, is with that roadmap, I know I had a really long wish list and future plans, and I think there's a temptation, especially when there's a little bit of a void currently, right? You see the potential, you want to pull additional items, and the scope expands. So really being able to clearly say, hey, this is what the pilot and proof of concept is intended to do. Here's our needs, here's our wants. Let's make sure we're clear on where the line's drawn, and we stick to we stay on course so that we can, meet the objective. And then again, I mean, I can't say enough about the right people involved. That's a critical element, both internal and external partners.
I know you took the route that you took, right? Doing a pilot. I agree with everything you just said. What was the timeline, right? What was the timeline? We looked at some numbers a little bit ago, right? What are the key business objectives, right? So you guys, before you kick this off with us, you guys, I don't know, I wasn't part of that process, but you guys, we came to some agreement on what the definition of success of a pilot looked like, correct? And
Sure.
What was the timeline for that pilot?
So we had, I guess where we wanted to see is, I think we had allowed, essentially for a quarter, but we were already starting to see results from utilizing CPQ in Romania nearly immediately, right? In terms of the quantity of quotes prepared and just the time spent on what was formerly a very manual process, became quickly very streamlined.
I love it. If we have time, I want to come back to something on that. But Josh, I want to let's shift gears and talk about integration. Just for time's sake. So there's multitude of options, right? And it depends on whether you're talking about finance or operations or EDI, blah blah blah, right? All these different things. But what are the main sources of data that companies need to consider when they're looking at Salesforce CPQ to integrate with on the back end?
Yeah, so there's a couple things to consider, and it depends on your business, of course. So on the back end, if you're a SaaS company and selling subscription software, you're thinking about integrating with a provisioning system or a service system, a PSA system, so that the information that you're gathering from a quote perspective, what the customer is buying, can feed the turning on or turning off or adjusting of services. And you can also think of the manufacturing side of the house. You need to be looking at your inventory management system, because you want to have those conversations with the customer based on the reality of delivery. What inventory is available, when, and at what price. And you need to sort of close the loop on these integrations as well. So CPQ is going to need to push into the inventory management system, for example, or the provisioning system, and those systems need to be able to talk back so that during the sales process, you have that information. Great example is like a system that calculates commission. If you can throw the commission values up in the header of the pricing page for the sales rep, as they give a discount, they're going to see how that impacts their commission. It's a great way to keep the sales reps selling properly. And then, of course, downstream ERP and financial systems of record as well. Sending that information downstream is critical for those systems, but also bringing that information back so that you can see payments. Salesforce has billing as well, but if you're sending it down to your billing system that's outside of Salesforce, having that invoice information back right close to the customer, so that the sales rep knows they're behind on invoices, they have a bunch outstanding, or they're up to date, and maybe it can give more or less of a discount. And CPQ can help organize and structure and put gates around all of those pricing and discount metrics based on the integration with these downstream systems.
That's great. Yeah, that's there's so many different options, right? Love the SaaS first manufacturing, right? We have customers on both sides, and it changes the entire dynamic of everything that we're delivering. But we love those challenges. Andrew, when when we were doing whether we talk about Romania or you want to talk about the global deployment, either way, what systems? Well, let's talk about Romania, right? What systems were you using? And did which you talked about earlier, right? Like, there's so many things that I want to do, right? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So what did you choose to do from an integration perspective start off with, and what's that roadmap look like now?
Yeah, so for the pilot, and this applies to both just the Romanian project and also as we roll out this kind of first phase globally within the division, we really limited our integrations to some of our existing engineering systems that we really needed for the configuration of equipment in the proposals and being able to pull in updated price lists. Now in our business, price lists don't change, really, they change more or less on an annual basis. So it's not a tremendous amount of data that we need to refresh constantly. So an annual refresh is more than adequate. But that really limited, kind of how much we bid off for this in terms of integration with existing systems. These engineering systems were were developed within the division. So those were directly under our control versus something that rolled up to corporate IT, which made it much easier for us to be able to make the changes required to move quickly on the pilot. In future, right down the road, we're absolutely exploring all of those, all the integrations and things that Josh mentioned, ERP integrations, and really feeding into some of that equipment demand planning so that we close the loop between quotations and knowing what might be available at the time we're quoting the job to what's actually on the ground when it comes time to deliver. And so, I mean, this kind of helped us limit, it made it much more manageable to run the pilot and to do that development, but also on the change management side. I mean, this is a monumental task in and of itself, just to introduce this new tool to the sales team and get them using it consistently and really that having it become the single source of truth and the place where everybody looks to get the information. So we wanted to really keep it confined to a group that we could manage. And this is somewhere around 450 sales reps globally. So even that, as we move throughout the entire division, that's a fair amount of people to chase down.
Absolutely.
We didn't want to impact too many other departments just quite yet, but we'll get there.
Yeah, makes sense. Totally agreed. Love it. Thank you. Nathan. So, working across different industries, a lot of different customers, right? Integrations with other systems, ERP comes up a lot. What's your best practice, right? To, if you're building, they have a significant amount, right? Andrew talked about, they already had these systems in place, right? For engineering, but let's talk about ERP. They already have systems in place that are already pre-built. So what's the best practice look like when they're building around a solution like ERP, and how could CPQ integrate the front of the house and the back of the house? What are those best practices that someone needs to consider?
Yeah. Well, again, for us, it's really understanding where things, the system of record. So in this case, if pricing is owned and managed in the ERP, Oracle or SAP or wherever it might be, making sure that that is respected and those updates are flowing to where they need to flow to, which again can be a problem before you have CPQ, because again, often we have customers using Excel or using any number of tools that aren't tied directly to, what is the current pricing, and you end up with prices that are out of date, and you're selling something thinking that it's a good margin, and not realizing that the price you're using is not the correct price. So for us, it's really understanding, what's the system of record for the various pieces of data, and then where should that be able to be used or visible for other teams. And for us also, it's understanding the groups of users. So if you're a sales rep, where is the sales rep doing their job most of the time, right? That's where should they be spending their time? And really, we think Salesforce is a great tool that they can have with them on the go, on their phone, on their laptop, wherever they are. And we want to make sure that they're able to do all that sales work in one spot. And then if you're thinking about accounting, great. Accounting, maybe their tool is, obviously a different tool, and so on. But having the systems talk to each other so that each group can use the tool best suited to their needs, but the groups and the tools are connected in the background.
Yeah. So everyone gets the benefit. Good deal. Let's go to poll question number 3. So if you're considering introducing a CPQ system, and it better be Salesforce, into your organization, you're welcome, Josh. What barriers are you facing in moving to a complete CPQ solution? Check all that apply, please. As everyone's going through and answering those, we have about 11 minutes left. We have one more section that we're going to cover, and that's lessons learned. But we'll transition to that here in just a minute. Just waiting on participation to come full circle on this, and I'll share what the greatest barriers are facing a complete CPQ. So let's see. We have a tie. So number 1. I feel like Vanna White or someone like that right now. Integration challenges, number 1, and tied for number 1, bandwidth, taking on too much. Both make a lot of sense, right? Bad data is up there, internal stakeholders, but the 2 top, integration challenges and bandwidth, taking on too much. So let's transition now, right? Because taking that into consideration, I'll ask Andrew first. Andrew, what's the biggest learning, right, or lesson learned from your experience this far, and what's next?
I'd say, not to underestimate the organizational resistance you might face and the level of change management required, even for the pilot with a small group. That was definitely underestimated initially.
Yeah, good. Josh, so one of the things they just said, right? Integration challenges, number 1. Tied with that was bandwidth. So I want to get to that, but the first thing I want to ask you about is really, what's the number 1 thing you'd want people to consider who are considering CPQ to take away from this, and what's the value benefit or value and benefits that are possible to them?
So I think there's a couple key ones. One is the power of really the platform. CPQ is a natural extension of Sales Cloud. Keeping sales data super close to your customer data makes the most sense. You can do better analytics. You can run a better sales process. CPQ provides structure with flexibility, and that keeps your downstream systems clean, less error prone. There's a ton of problems that can happen if you cause issues up front in the process. And CPQ understands the passage of time. So issues with renewals, uplifts upon renewal and amendments. CPQ is designed to sort of to handle that. And really minimizing errors, minimizing and maximizing cross-sell, upsell, and better pricing gives the company and the customer better experiences. And in the end, it's really about providing the customer with the best product in the best configuration with the best pricing, and all of that makes for a better customer experience. And that's really the key, is providing that ultimate customer experience.
Love it. It reminds me of my early days with ExactTarget, and Scott Dorsey, who was our co-founder and CEO. His stake in the ground, right? When he said, "I'm going to dominate this email marketing space," he said, "Right message, right place, right time." Right. So it's those three things. And it's kind of the same thing with CPQ, right? Doing those three things, the ultimate is putting those three pieces in place to generate the greatest amount of benefit. In the poll a second ago, one of the top two responses was bandwidth challenges. What's your feedback on that, Josh? What's some best practices that you've seen? You've been a part of hundreds, probably thousands of these CPQ conversations and working with accounts at Salesforce. So how have you seen successful accounts and customers work against that challenge, work against the concern of bandwidth?
So to me, the key there is to have a clear evaluation methodology and process with well-defined structure around use case and requirements that are based, as I discussed earlier, in the biggest pain, which tends to be revenue. And so when you have a well-defined process with structured requirements, the process moves down the road and people's bandwidth just sort of falls into place. Because it does take people to get involved. You need to be part of discoveries and evaluations and write-ups and emails and meetings and things like that. But keeping your eye on those critical use cases, on the most pain and how it's going to get solved by CPQ so that it goes away, is the light at the end of the tunnel of the bandwidth problem.
I like it. Nathan. Right, tons of CPQ projects you've led. What advice do you give, right, or that you've seen and wish companies would know up front? I think Josh just covered a couple of great points.
Yeah. I want to again just to put that little reminder of the CPQ Iceberg and that idea of making it the simple, easy to use but flexible system for the sales users does require some investment on the administration side of things. So making the system smarter to automate things. And we know bandwidth is an issue. We all have way too much to do and never enough time to do it. But that's where we try our best to guide those conversations. So rather than just sitting there and saying, "What do you want?" We're saying, okay, so based on how we understand your company, let's walk through some of the things that we see other companies doing and best practices that are out there, and giving them options, giving them suggestions. And so we are doing the work to say, okay, like let us present to you what we think you might want, and then it makes the feedback session that much faster and easier, because you don't know what you don't know. And customers, often again can't envision what it could look like, and so us saying, well, it can be automated in these ways, or we can provide pricing guidance, or suggested discounts, or whatever it might be, to make it that much faster and easier for the process up front, and then of course for the sales reps and that whole team involved once it's rolled out to your company.
That's great. Thanks so much. So I had one question come in, Andrew, and it's for you. You talked earlier about don't get scared. It's pretty softball question, but it's one that I think a lot of people probably have a question on. So you talked earlier about like immediate result, right? You saw immediate results. It didn't take a quarter. It was like in a month, and we saw the numbers. There was like year over year a 25% increase in productivity. Okay, so the question was, how many people pre-CPQ how many people were involved in a quoting process versus post CPQ implementation? What did that look like at Brand?
Yeah, so in Romania, and this is fairly typical in most of the regions in the division, we had really had, in there especially, so part of the desire to move to CPQ was, you know, standardization of our quoting process, approvals, and just quickly before, when we were initially doing some of the investigation, you know, I polled around some of the sales team, and I asked 5 of our, you know, better sales reps to send me their most recent 5 proposals, and I got 22 different templates and price lists, and I mean, it was all over the place. So the team in Romania, especially, so not just from a presentation standpoint or a format standpoint, but how is the actual information in the quote generated? And part of this was we achieved through bundling and guided selling, so kind of pre-configured packages of equipment that are commonly used. And what we had done in previously, prior to the introduction of CPQ, the sales team in Romania would take their proposal and go to engineering, and engineering would have to generate the technical solution, and then from that, the sales rep would then put together the proposal and submit to the customer. In utilizing the guided selling features and some of the solutions that were baked into CPQ, we were able to eliminate that engineering step for all but the most complex, technically challenging projects. And so for your straightforward daily business, bread and butter type work, the sales rep now had the tools that they were able to utilize and generate an accurate, you know, validated proposal on their own independently. So we were able to eliminate and free up engineering time and resources to have them focus on the projects where their skill set was really going to add the most value.
Love it. Thanks so much.
One thing I wanted to add there, if you don't mind.
Hopefully we don't get cut off. Go ahead.
Sorry. The approval process, because there wasn't, the system didn't know what the correct approvals were before CPQ, everything had to go to the managing director. And so you had the big boss whose time is the most difficult to get, looking through every single thing. And then we were able to say, okay, let's build the system to know what the correct approvals are. And so if it's meeting all of those criteria, it can be approved right away, versus if it actually does need to be looked by the manager. So that was even another step beyond engineering that could, again, slow down the process and involve another person that maybe doesn't have to be there. But yeah, we're out of time. Sorry.
Yep. Hey, real quick before we get cut off, thank you, Josh, so much. Great insights, knowledge. Andrew, you're a rock star. We love you. And can't wait to continue working with Brand, not just on the forming and shoring side, but in the other divisions as well. To the audience, thank you so much. Some great questions. I didn't get to them all. Hopefully the content was good. If you have any questions, or if you're interested in, as Nathan said, exploring this further, click the link at the top where it says AllCloud Salesforce CPQ Accelerator. We'd love to talk to you. We'd love to explore this further, and we'll bring experts, to your organization virtually for now. But we will help you tackle those tough challenges and answer those questions that you don't know what you don't know. So let's talk. Until next time. Thank you so much, and again, I appreciate everyone's time today. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.